Good day. I'm John Fernandez. Welcome to eNewsline Live from AACSB's World Headquarters in Tampa, Florida. Today's topic of discussion will be management education in Russia and beyond, as part of the series of eNewsline segments that will focus on current issues and trends in specific world regions. Just over 20 years old, modern Russian business education is poised to take its place on the world stage of business education. The country's schools have made significant strides during this time, with demand for business education in the post-industrial economy driven by growing competition among firms and a need for qualified managers to lead in a new economic era. My guest today is Sergey Myasoedov, who is the vice rector of the Russian Presidential Academy and dean of its leading business school, IBS Moscow, as well as president of the Russian Association of Business Education, RABA. Dean Myasoedov has been active with the RABA for other initiatives and focused on strengthening management education in Russia and in promoting the cooperation between the education and the business sector. He also participates in discussions and lectures around the world on topics related to the economic and political system reforms of the Russian Federation. We're excited to have Sergey join us today to share his valuable insights on a topic that, although of significant interest in the higher education community, is not widely discussed and retains a level of mystique surrounding it. Sergey, welcome to ENL.
Thank you very much, John, for this fantastic opportunity.
Well, Sergey, I'm happy to greet you. As just a few months ago in January, I visited Sergey at the Galder Forum in Moscow, and it was a very interesting trip. But I must say that it was 10 degrees Fahrenheit at tops, and today we have 85 degrees in Tampa, so I think we're treating you well to good weather.
Thank you. Fantastic weather.
Wonderful.
Very good sight from the windows of my hotel. Everything is above the price.
Well,
thank you very much.
Well, it's lovely to have you here. So we'll get started. Business education in Russia seems to have gone and continues to go through transformations that follow the historical and socio-political transitions within the country. How has Russia's transition to a market economy shaped business education in the country?
Thank you very much for a very good question. You see, I just want to remind to those people who follow us that 25 years ago, we didn't have business education in Russia at all. During Soviet era, everything belonged to the state. We didn't have business, and so we didn't have demand for business education. So first business schools were created only in the year of 1988. Two super business schools were created by the Soviet government of this time, and then one private independent, during that time, private independent business school approached with the name of IBS Moscow. I'm very proud to represent it today as one of the leading collegiate business schools that is working on campus of Russian Presidential Academy, the biggest Russian and European university of today's day. You see, during that time, we didn't know anything about business education. And thanks to American taxpayers, there was organized a very nice program of executive retraining where they were inviting leaders of the first upmerged Russian business schools at Harvard and Wharton, and so I am alumni of both of those schools, where they changed our perception and mentality. 3 years later, in the year of 1991, the deans of those first three business schools met together and started talking about the necessity to establish something like SASB International. And so RABE was established. Initially, the membership of RABE consists of half a dozen of business schools because they were upmerging one after another, but it was very, very beginning. Now 25 years passed. RABE has about 150 members representing the best business schools of Russia from one side, from eastern frontier up to western frontier of our country. Some of those business schools have international accreditations. In fact, today, Russian business schools have 15 international accreditations out of the group of Triple Crown. And I can say that today Russian business education is growing pretty rapidly. Just imagine, 0, then 3, then 150. No business professors, no Russian case studies. There are Russian case studies. We made certain jump here.
Well, it's significant development, even since my first trip in 2005 as a host of your predecessor, Leonid Ivanko.
Yes.
It was a wonderful trip. The exposure was significant, but I saw progress from previous experiences, and since then, in this previous trip in January, I've noticed even more development. So it's certainly come a long way, and as I said, poised to take leadership in the world. Next question, how do the post-perestroika generation of business programs and business students differ from the previous generation?
They differ. They differ. If you permit, I want to remind you a very old story from the Bible. Moses was working with the people of Israel across the desert for 40 years. Why for 40 years? He was waiting for the generation of slaves to pass away. He was waiting for the new generation of people with new values. When 25 years ago we started business education in Russia, the majority of our clients were from previous generation. If you'd like, they were programmed for the values during Soviet time. They were afraid to do something without getting special permission. They were, pretty narrow-minded, that their vision was broadening step by step. Plus to this, they didn't know anything about business. And our first classes and programs, they were just like ABC. We were learning what is stock exchange, what is shares of stocks, what is project management, what is management as a definition, etc. Now more than 20 years passed, and that means that new generation is coming, and those people are much more broadly focused. They do not think just of today's profit. They are thinking about social responsibility, about some sustainable value, plus to this they are very technically advanced. When you are coming to the audience, especially, you see, executives, they still belong to the previous generation. When you are coming to the audience where the boys and girls of BBA programs in management are sitting, you just step into a different world. Every person keeps computer on the knees, and they're working, and they're in this world net. And so you're like a professor, you are competing with Wikipedia. And you understand that if you'll be lecturing like at Humboldt University they normally did, if you are just transferring information, they won't follow you, because they can see that on the screen and they can immediately reach the knowledge and the wisdom of Peter Drucker and Michael Porter, and you cannot compete. So unless you bring them some new vision of the problem, unless you provoke them for some thinking together, they're not ready to follow you. It's a very nice new generation of business oriented for values, of business thinking more globally, with more diversified culture, very often bilingual. I'm very optimistic about the new generation of Russian businessmen.
Yeah. Well, it's mentioned just a lot of progress in a very short time. In perspective, U.S. business schools began with Joseph Wharton's efforts with the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania in 1881. So we're 141 years old, 20 years old, 7 times the age. A lot of progress made quickly. The other point that you make is it goes beyond Russian and Eastern European education to, I think, the challenge is for faculty worldwide, and that's to add value in the classroom beyond all the electronic stimulation that students receive. That's going to be a more and more important issue in the future, and an important challenge. In the last 20 years, the number of business programs in Russia has largely grown, and the desire among industry to hire graduates with adequate business skills and acumen has become extremely important to being globally competitive. How would you characterize the demand from industry, students, and society for the different types of business programs in Russia and Eastern Europe?
The demand for business education is growing. It is growing all over the world. However, I have to say that in Russia, just like all over the world, just like at the United States of America, in Europe, etc., the customers, they are looking for some new, I can say modernized, more innovative, more custom-driven product, and same happens today in Russia. We can feel that traditional MBA programs started losing their market. The people who used to go previously for traditional MBA programs today very often prefer the master programs in general management. They are less expensive, they are not that tough to follow, etc. And so the leading business schools in Russia, following this new demand, they're looking for something new. What are the new trends? First new trend, which we can feel in the Russian market, I can characterize in the following way. We have to move from business school or the school of business to the school for business. When we're designing our programs, we have to be in permanent contact with our clientele, with the representatives of business. We have to bring more business people to our audience. I am familiar with all the discussions about that. Business people, they're not obliged to know how to teach. Still, all the leading business schools of the world managed to find those great businessmen and executives who are simultaneously fantastic actors and who like to teach and know how to share their knowledge and skill. And so this is one trend. Second trend, I consider this is cultural diversity. Business schools should step by step to become more and more global. We live in a global world, and so this trend is very important. And the third thing we can feel in Russia, plus to the managerial heart, the people, especially executives of the top level, they are thinking about self-development, the development of their leadership potential, of their emotional intelligence. And then the Russian business school, say comprising IBS Moscow, it's easy for me to use this example. We recently invited several great actors from Moscow Art Theater. We're teaching leadership via the theater, how to convince your followers. If you are a leader, you have followers, and you have to convince them that your set of values is the best set of value, and that they should get commitment and to go together with you. I know that many outstanding business schools of the world are doing the same. For example, I read a lot of great articles about the experimental MBA program of E. Impresa and Business School of Brown University, the United States. I want to say that the leading business schools of Russia are thinking in the same way, because this is what the changing market demands.
It's very important. In fact, one of the points you've made I want to discuss a little further, and that's the importance of relevance of the business curriculum, the program, to business. And I think this is critical in emerging economies. Now, historically, we've looked at business schools as being a main objective of developing the student's mind for the long term. There's a little bit of a tug between that. I'm not asking a question. What I'm saying is that very important to be relevant, particularly in emerging economies, very important to be moving the workforce towards a higher level of efficiency and towards innovation. And we may see a bit of a strain with the need to develop long-term thinking. Do you have a response to that? I know that's kind of a little...
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. And again, maybe I exaggerate this factor, but those who work in the emerging or transition economies, where this transition of generation happens in between other things, that they feel what you mentioned, especially clear. I remember 5-10 years ago when we used to ask our grads about some sport, some charity, they were pretty reserved because it was outside of former socialist culture. You see, the state should pay for everything. We have to get knowledge predominantly better for free and would not have any responsibility for our alma mater, etc. Now we can feel that new generation of managers, they want sponsorship. They want to do something valuable for the society. They want to look further, what you mentioned. It's different vision. It's not the vision. I shall make property immediately. I shall buy villa somewhere on the island and would be sitting there happily. Those people, they're thinking about the country. They're thinking about the planet. They're thinking about their children. With this change of generation, it's again a new phenomenon for Russia. Many top executives whom we retrain, they ask us a question, and what to do with the heritage? We create a business. How can we make it sustainable so that our children and our grandchildren could continue, so that all the stakeholders. I'm looking for the word. I'm sorry, that's not my mother tongue.
You're doing very well.
Yeah, it's so that all the stakeholders in the country, in the region, were satisfied. It's new phenomena. It emerged recently during the last 5 or 6 years, and it is becoming stronger and stronger. So the discussions of social responsibility of business, of sustainability of business, of green programming, of the global environment issues within MBA programs, all that looked a decade ago for us absolutely theoretical. And now this is a growing demand of our customers. So it seems to me that we are following this general farvater or this general line of the whole world.
Very good. In regard to faculty and teaching at the undergraduate level specifically, what major areas do you think require further skill and capacity development in the region, or if you wish to speak generally?
It's a very philosophical question, and in fact, absolutely seriously, that's the question we discussed and we've been thinking over very carefully during the latest years. For me personally, because everything you see, everything started introspectively with your own ideas, I met a very interesting guy who is running one of the most famous Russian nuclear research institutes named after Kurchatov. The guy, in between other things, is a professor of nuclear physics. And he told me, Sergey, I came recently to the conclusion that even when you train physics at bachelor level, you have to train them not only about their primary field of interest. Physics is not enough for them in this world. They have to get a bunch of knowledge in humanities. They have to get an idea about philosophy, literature, psychology, etc. And it was sort of a push for me. And then when a year and a half, by the decree of a Russian president, Russian presidential economy was established, we started talking with the people of the World Bank about the concept of the biggest humanity university of Europe. And we came to the conclusion that business education, of course, closer for me, that even those students who follow BBA programs in management, plus to managerial heart, that's, of course, a core, econometrics, operations, optimizational models, financial mathematics, that's core, that's managerial heart. It should be there, but plus to that, they should get a growing portion of managerial soft. And plus to this, within the field of a big university, the students of BBA programs of business school, by our perception, should be able to get minors from other departments, like I mentioned, philosophy, literature, maybe designing, maybe music, because if we are thinking about the sustainable leaders, we have to develop the leaders with the broad world vision, and managerial hard plus soft should have additional big plus of humanity knowledge, in the broad meaning of this word.
Yes, and I think that message applies globally, certainly within your region, globally. Well, Mr. Putin has returned, and perhaps he never left. But I know from our discussions that he's very interested in management education. So in that context, I want to lead into the next topic. Russian students are increasingly pursuing MBA degrees elsewhere, a trend mirrored in a number of other emerging and transition economies, according to some recent reports on student mobility. Can you comment on this observation? What are the factors influencing students to pursue degrees outside of Russia? And I'm talking about the master's level, and how could this be remedied? Or how does Mr. Putin expect you to remedy it?
Thank you. Very interesting, a little bit unexpected question. You see, I'm not a political analyst. I'm a business educational analyst and a dean of the business school. So I shall talk from the perception of education and business education. First, a whole education and business education. I consider that globalization and growing mobility of human capital as a whole, it is a very good and positive trend. And we shouldn't try to stop it, and by no means we are able to stop it, because it is objective. The world is shrinking, and the people today, the best people, they belong to the planet as a whole. So the students and professors, they are traveling across the world today. I mean, our students and professors, and my understanding, Western students and professors, much more than 2, 3, or 4 decades ago, and it would be growing. Now, about what is called brain drain and mobility of the students to one side when they are going to the other country to study, etc. Again, this is partially objective, and here there is a very big challenge to the universities, business school, and the countries as a whole, because for the best brains, for the most entrepreneurial people with the broad vision, lots of opportunity exists, unless you find for them some very interesting and challengeable work at home. They will go away. Yeah. And it's not always the problem of money. Not with the bread alone a person lives. Once again, we're in the world of growing sustainability of business. When the people are thinking about tomorrow, the students want to be professionally developed. I can say that with the leading universities of Russia, the situation is not that bad. Because, using IBS Moscow, we have today 13 double degree programs with the Western universities, and so lots of our students are studying abroad. By our statistics over the last decade, about 20% of the people stayed to work somewhere outside of the country. 80% of the students returned back. So I consider that it is normal. Second observation, when we're coming to business, any executive, when he's coming to business school, to the great Harvard, or to some medium-range business school, or to business schools, say, in India or in Russia or anywhere, businessman or business person, that they are buying affects 3 values, if you permit me to sound cynically. They are buying top brand, they are buying social connections, and they are buying knowledge, skills, vision, etc., what creates the academic part of this business school. From this point of view, we're asked very often the questions by our potential clientele: where to study? in Russia for the Russian degree, outside of Russia for the Western degree, or inside of Russia a double degree program trying to get both. The explanation is very simple. If you feel that you'd like to work with the multinationals outside of Russia, and if you can afford, you're coming to Harvard, or Wharton, or to some other American or European business school. You get degree, you got proper contacts and work there. If your business is Russian-based, and for today's day in our local market, 93% are Russian-speaking people, then for you it is better to follow the track of Russian MBA program that is based on Russian managerial model. Such a model, in fact, exists too, and it provides you local advantages. If you didn't make your decision, or if you want to work here or there, then maybe it is better to use one of double degree programs of leading Russian business schools with well-positioned American or European business schools. We have today about 40 of such programs in Russia as a whole and about 20 in Moscow only. In this case, mixed team of professors will share their knowledge and skill with you. You have a mixed audience where there would be both Russian and non-Russian businessmen. So you'll get contacts of both. And you'll be trained on case studies which are backed by the wisdom and managerial models of both sides. You'll be culturally more diversified in this way.
Your point about 80% of those that go internationally for MBAs come back to Russia, I think is a good one. Particularly for the United States to examine this. Historically, one of the benefits the U.S. has had is that it would take the best and brightest, particularly into the PhD programs, and then we tended to retain them from around the world. But more and more individuals that go through PhD programs are going back home. It's been a particular emphasis in China to recruit back the very best. And the key to it is offering the individual a strong opportunity of development and importance and prestige in one's native land. And I think the element of patriotism is important. All of these motivators tend to be much better in an environment which you describe of how to develop students. Well, I have certainly other questions, but my time is up, and now we'll be discussing questions that have come in from our live audience. Where are they? Oh, there they are, finally. A member from Belgium asks, what will be the place of foreign languages, business communications, and intercultural communications in future Russian business programs? And I'm going to have to read these.
I can say, it is both philosophical and technical a question from my point of view. You see, any good MBA program from my point of view should have double stresses. I already mentioned that on managerial hard and managerial soft. And so communicational skill, language skills, and cross-cultural skills. Thank you very much for this question, because I'm professor of cross-cultural management. I like this approach very much. They should occupy a proper place in any MBA program. As far as Russia is becoming more and more globally involved with every year, as far as the quantity of English-speaking people is growing with this change of generations, I assume that the role of those disciplines within Russian MBA programs would be growing and progressing too.
A viewer from the United States wants to know how nonprofit organizations are viewed among Russia and the CIS countries, and whether this is an area of study in Russian business education. I find this very relevant and timely, but can you address that, Sergey?
You see, the interest towards management education, both in Russia and Commonwealth of Independent States, is growing. I can volunteer you extra information. When we made a number of polls, when the people have the right not to sign their questionnaires, among our students, asking them what sort of profession, BBA students, they'd like to choose, where they'd like to see themselves in 20 or 30 years. I understand that we have special clientele. Students of management, they think about business. Still, 2/3 of them were saying, we'd like to have our independent business, innovative, something very special, something very much customized, and something that would permit us to be creative, entrepreneurial, and personally to provide our personal development. From this point of view, I assume that with this change of generation, interest towards business education would be growing, both in Russia and in the countries around.
Yeah, I think I read when I was in Russia, there's an advent now of NGOs and encouragement from the government. And particularly, the message I heard was that there's a call upon NGOs and associations to begin to develop standards. And it almost sounds like a move towards accreditation in our mode of thinking as it relates to business schools. So I'm a bit interested in your thoughts. Do you believe that as China is doing, that Russia will develop its domestic accreditation system for business schools?
Thank you for a very interesting question. First of all, about non-for-profit organizations. I don't know about the rest of the world, but it seems to me the situation is the same. All the business schools of Russia, they are non-for-profit. Business education is still not quite a business. At least I do not believe in short-term vision business when you are selling knowledge like pancakes. You do not sell knowledge. You'd rather scatter the values, like the people used to scatter the gospels, etc. You have to think about something more sustainable. Plus to this, all the associations of the world, to the extent I know, they're organized as non-for-profit organizations comprising RAB, Russian Association of Business Education, which I represented as a president. And the organization, in fact, today, it is developing together with the leading business organizations of Russia, like Russian Chamber of Trade and Commerce, like Russian Banking Association, like Russian Management Association. We develop a set of independent quality assessment standards. But this is not the only thing RAB is doing, just like SASB. We organize a lot of workshops to retrain professors. We are visiting numerous conferences across our huge country with 9-hour belts. It's still the biggest country in the world, and we're traveling and we're trying to help the local business school to grow rapidly. We organize special brainstorming think tanks. We exchange the modern experience. We're publishing and scatter for free among our members a special magazine, just like SASB. Non-for-profit organization is doing something for the sake of the members. It's not the short-sighted approach about immediate money. It's something more sustainable. And that, in fact, makes the life of all those people who are doing that, at least in my perception, much more interesting. Just recently, 2 weeks ago, RABE held a workshop for the training of young faculties. We invited all the best coaches and trainers we knew in Russia, and not a single of them asked a penny for fee. They made it for free because they were training younger generation of the Russians. I consider this very good.
Very important. Well, from your southern neighbor, India, a member asks, how do companies in Russia address the challenges of cross-culture and workplace diversity in a globalized world economy?
Great question for my Indian friend. The pattern of culture of Russia and India are in fact very close. It's without pros or contras, without good or bad. Just we are very close in mentality, in the pattern of behavior, etc. And so I consider that cooperation between Indian and Russian business schools could bring a lot of very good things for business communities of both countries. We can do mutual research about the speciality of the models of management. We can provide exchange of faculties and students. There are some limitations there, and recently we discussed them at the meeting with Indian friends. When our clients, they are looking for some best world brands when they are coming to study with us. I won't be speaking about India, the brands even of the toppest Russian business schools, that they still are much, much below than the brands of the leading Western business schools. So I consider that we have to concentrate our cooperation on the peculiarities. If you'd like, following the motto, think globally, act locally. If our researchers, scholars, academics, and professors would be speaking about the peculiarities of our model of management, I consider we can create a very good and positive synergy effect.
Back to the United States, viewer asks, what is the role of innovation among business schools in Russia, specifically for strengthening cooperation between business education and the corporate world?
It's not an easy question. I can say that the leading business schools of Russia are learning Western experience and are making their primary steps following this difficult path. I know by now at least about a dozen, once again, leading Russian business schools which recently established incubators, say, like great MIT, with whom, in between other things, thank you very much for the people we cooperate, and we are learning their experience. We are trying to provide mutual conferences and round tables with the leading companies working in Russia. We try to make special programs for them and say, when our leading business schools are making programs for the Sberbank, the biggest bank of Russia, or say Microsoft Russia, or Oracle Russia, the leading world software companies, both sides are learning. And all the time those programs, after mutual work with business, they are becoming different and more innovative. Major problem, not only in Russia. I hear about that at all the conferences. Business is too much occupied to explain to business school what they need. And business schools sometimes feel that they are too great and too much occupied too to ask business persistently, people, what do you need? How can we help you? How we can restructure your program? We're learning how to establish this dialogue. I won't be enumerating the names of business schools and the names of the companies. If some of the customers would be interested, I shall print that and send it. It would take time. We are learning. Again, it happened during the last decade or maybe 5 or 6 years ago, especially actively.
Most likely our last question, and I'm going to make it a little broader than the writer is from a European member, asks, how will the Russian Association of Business Education, RABA, encourage exchange of academic staff and students with AACSB accredited business schools? Now, that's a specific question, but I want to broaden it to say, how will RABA and schools themselves view or hopefully increase their efforts to establish international collaborations with schools throughout the world? I think that's very, very important to globalization and student development in that capacity.
Absolutely. RABA is rethinking its strategy now, and RABA is planning to become much more globally oriented. And thank you very much for this opportunity. This is one of the steps in cooperation and in this way. First of all, what can RABA really do? Directly or via our great friends of SASB. If some of the American business schools think about partnership in Russia, please send us a message once again via our friends or directly, and we shall try to provide you recommendation and to advise, to provide proper contacts and proper references with the business schools. Business school differs. It depends what sort of a partner you are looking forward. It can be a research partner, students exchange partner, let's say pre-experience master program. It can be double degree. It can be something else. And I consider that RABA has to help our clients, both in Russia and outside, to meet each other. We have to facilitate this process. And this is what RABA is trying to do. And that is what RABA is trying to do together with our great partners like SASB International.
Well, I think many of us have to consider doing what I did, fly to Houston, Texas, and fly nonstop to Moscow. It's not such a long trip. My only advice is not to do it in January. You might want to try it in June. Thank you, Sergey. You've done a wonderful job. It's been extremely intriguing, and you're taking the time to come so far. I jokingly talk about the distance is wonderful for us, and we appreciate it, and the global world of management education appreciates your commentary. It's a wonderful job.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you very much for the support of Russian Association of Business Education. I really appreciate that, and we hope to see you in Russia, though the distance is here, unfortunately. We hope to see you in Russia many, many times again.
Good. Go Rava. And thanks to you, our viewing audience from across the globe, for your active participation in this enlightening discussion on how management education in Russia and neighboring countries came to be what it is today, and the challenges and opportunities their business schools face in the future. Please mark your calendars for the next broadcast of ENL, which will be scheduled for July 25th, and we will have James Dean, that's not the movie star, of Keenan Flagler Business School at the University of North Carolina. He'll be joining us and sharing his insights on incorporating online learning into management education. We'll be very interested in his comments as we develop standards for the Blue Ribbon Committee on Accreditation Quality, which will be going to the membership this fall. So tune into that one, and thank you very much. Have a great day.